Hello, and welcome back to our series where we are building a people and culture management system. We're currently working on our compensation dashboard piece, and this series is brought to you by Prairie HR Solutions. My name is Jake Finger, Principal Consultant and Founder here at Prairie HR Solutions, and in this video, I would like us to take what we've done in our previous videos and send that information dynamically to our drop down here. Now, if you don't know where we've got this piece from, please go back and watch our previous videos because we built this dashboard here from scratch, and it may make a little bit more sense as to where all this is coming from. So we currently have two drop downs that we're wanting the user to use to filter if they so choose by either area, county, statewide, whatever, and job. So when we're doing a market study, yes, the job title and the appropriate data from the market should populate here just like it's doing down here. But there are times that if you're looking at a more organizational wide picture, you would also like to see, say, how the accountants are faring compensation wise to the budget analyst or whatnot, whatever the situation is. So you kind of want to, there are times you want to look laterally, and then there's also times that you want to look vertically. Are subordinates making more than their hiring managers and or directors? And if so, is there a reason why? Have they been there for 30 years or whatnot? Or is it just a compensation structure that needs to be kind of tweaked and modified? So that's the purpose behind these two drop-down filters here. And what we did previously was we created this function, this get market dropdown, to grab that data and put it here into an array. So we have the area and the job, and that's coming from our salary market data here. And again, this is just randomly pulled data. So it's for functionality. I would not use this to actually make any kind of business decisions, but it's what it would look like and how it would function. So we're pulling this column and that column. And what we're wanting to do is to take this and fill those drop-down boxes with these options. And the first thing that we had to do was want to get that data, find the last row with a string in it or data, and then use that to grab the final values. And then we needed to use our new set constructor here to make a shallow copy and then remove all those duplicates. And this is a very handy line of code if you needed to ever remove duplicates from an array. And then we simply return that. So let's run this and you'll see exactly how it's going to return. As you can see, it's a two-dimensional array. And this first array, this 0, is all of our counties. And that ends right here. And then this next array, which is index 1, is all of our job titles. So now we can take this and actually send it somewhere. So instead of logging this, we can simply return it. So what I would like to do now is to go over to our client side, our JavaScript side, and write a code that will receive this data. Now we haven't created the trigger. We haven't done the Google script run with success handler piece yet. We're just working on the Google Apps or server side function. And now we're going to do the client side function. And then once we get this function done, then we will connect it to the drop-down box and to that. So we've done this previously with our pop comp DD, and this fills our drop downs for all the other ones. So our employee number, our state, jobs, division, all that. The challenge with this is this is based dynamically on what other filters are. So I don't necessarily want to take the data that we are having and sending this over here because it's not going to filter. We want to keep it, we don't want to filter these two drop downs down. We want to keep it full. And instead of sending it here or writing an if statement or whatever and kind of cluttering this up, I would like to just create another function to populate those through. So let's just call this function pop comp market dd to work. And we're going to kind of do the same exact thing. Let's create another constant variable here, and let's call it market drop down mapping, because we're going to use this map to run this for each on and our object constructor here. And this is going to be an object. And the thing we're going to need is the ID of those two boxes, those two drop downs. So our first ID is market area filter and market job filter. Okay, easy enough. Market area filter. And so that's the key. Now this value is going to be whatever index that's at. So our area is going to be at the 0 index of this array coming over, and our job is going to be at the index 1. So we just simply put 0, and then we need market job filter, and that is going to be 1. So now we have a variable set for an object that is essentially mapping the ID to the index. So now we can take this map and then run this object constructor on it. So we're pretty much doing the same exact thing. And we want to take the entries of that market drop down mapping. And then we want to run on this a for each loop. And we're going to do the same exact thing here. In fact, we can even use the same piece. It's going to be the drop down ID, this, and the index. Now this is going to receive something. And we called that something up here data. And I suppose we can call it here as well. Let's just call this DD data, just to keep it separate to make sure that we know that this is coming from a different place. So this for each, we want to use the drop down ID. And then we're going to want not the data index, but the DD data index. Like so. And then let's make sure that we get, okay, there's our array. There's our inner, outer. So we need to run our code right here. Okay. So now what we need to do is for every time that it comes across this drop-down ID and a data index, so it's only going to do it twice, we need to run a block of code. And that block of code is going to be this piece right here. And let's just retype this so you can kind of see what's happening, because I know it's been a while that we did this. So let's create a constant that stores the ID of whatever drop down it is that we're going to. And we can just call it a drop down, because remember this, although this is a constant, its scope, as it's called, exists within this function. So this function can't jump in and grab that. So we can just call it drop down again. It's not going to make too much of a difference. And that is going to be document.getElement by ID. And the reason why we're doing it this way is because we don't have to write document get element by ID for both of these. And then that is equal to index 0, index 1. It's just a little bit cleaner. So instead of putting the ID in here, we're just going to pass this. So drop down ID. So when it gets to this, it's going to use that. When it gets to this, it's going to use that. So now let's write an if statement, and we want to check to see if that drop down or data even exists first. And if not, it'll just, we'll just throw a little error there. So if our drop down variable and our DD data at the data DD data index is actually there, this is going to return true. And if it returns true, then we want it to run a code. And that code is going to be for every DD data at the DD data index, we are going to run another for each. Because what we're going to need to do is take each one of these values and populate it underneath that drop-down box, that select box. So we'll do a for each, and we'll stick with category. This can be anything, but we'll stick with calling this a category, because this category is going to be the value of whatever this is until it gets to the end. So we'll just call this category. And so we have essentially a for each nested in a for each. And we'll call this constant option. This is pretty typical because that's what you're creating, an option. It's going to be document, not get element by ID. What we're going to do is create an element. And I want to pause here for a second because this is kind of important when we're thinking about, currently I'm doing essentially a decision tree to where the tree doesn't exist until you make a choice. And it's kind of like a FAQ type thing. And to keep things kind of condensed and consolidated, what I'm using is a create element. Now this create element can be anything. It can be a div, it could be really anything. But what we're creating for this select element is an option. Because if you come over here, we are creating this element right here. And we're creating it for every single piece of data. And then we're filling that value, or the value, and then we're filling the content of it. So let's create that option. And the opposite of this create element would be remove element. So we could actually remove elements as well to kind of hide them. So what we want to do is now is take this variable option, give it a value, and that value is going to be whatever the category is at the time, or for that line. And then we also want to give it a text content is also going to be equal to that category. And what this is doing, when we come back over here, it's setting the value. So you see that this is a numeric one in the form of a string, and then this is the word one. What we're doing is making them exactly the same. So this value is actually going to end up being like that. And then this would be spelled out 2, that would be spelled out 3. That way we can assess the value instead of having to get that inner HTML or that inner content. So now what we need to do is we need to take this as it's hitting it for each category, for each time it hits it. We want to send it to the drop down to append the child. Now it's just like when you're thinking of a drop down, it's a lot like a family structure. You have the parent, which is essentially that select box, and then the child is each option. So you can have as many childs as needed underneath that one parent. So we want to take the drop down and append the child. And you can think of this as like appending the row in AppScript. It's kind of the same concept. It goes to the end and then it creates another row or another child, as JavaScript calls it. Okay, so now we have that. We are missing something here. And what we are missing is this should be here, like so. For each, and then this is the outer for each. Okay, good. So now that should take care of that. Now the only thing we need to do is get this to run. So we need to write a Google script run when we need it to run and populate this. So where we would need this to run, we could put it up here for now just to get it to work. And then we can figure out a better place for it to kind of jump in and tag on, because we don't want it to hold up anything. Okay, so what we're going to need to run first is this Google App Script. And our Google App Script is this. And then what we're going to need to run once that gets done and sent back over, once it returns that, is our pop comp market. DD. Okay, so let's save this and see how it goes. Refresh it, and now we should have data populating inside our drop downs here. And we do. Now, as you can see, it is sorted, so it's in alphabetical order. And it's every unique item inside that spreadsheet column that we're replacing. You'll notice that we still have our 1, 2, 3, so we need to get rid of all those, because what's happening is it's leaving these here, but then it's just appending the child underneath. So we'll get rid of that. Let's check the jobs. And I know you can't see inside of these because of just how it's shared. And the way Bootstrap does this is it uses a Z index for our drop downs. So it's pushed off our screen, so it's not actually sharing. But if you're following along, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So our jobs are there along with that 1, 2, 3. So let's come back over here to our total rewards page, and you'll see that all it's doing is it's leaving this here. It's not replacing any of this. We're appending the child. And we want our all areas always there, but we don't want the rest of this stuff there. So we can get rid of that. And we can get rid of this. And if you didn't want this default here, then you would essentially just remove that and have just a select. And then it would just append whatever's there. Okay, so let's go back here and check this out, make sure that worked and we don't have any spelling errors. Which is fine. Yep, perfect and perfect. Okay, good. So we could leave this here just once it's loaded, like that. Or what we could do is come down here to, once our .com is loaded, it's going to run this get comp DD and then populate the DD. So what we could do is chain this instead and come down here to this comp DD. And then once it gets done with it, then we want it to run that line. Just make sure that it's outside the for each, or is it going to try and run this for every single line of data that it has. So let's try that and see if there's a noticeable difference in performance. There shouldn't be, but we do need to speckle our little spinner there to make sure that we are slowing down our users. Okay, let's make sure that we have all these. Okay, good. So let's select something here, like so. And then let's come up here and select a division. Let's select finance. Wait for that to update. We'll need a spinner there. We'll lock that, and then we'll make sure that this doesn't run, and it doesn't. Good. So that's all we wanted to do, because we didn't want to have this run every filter, and I was worried about that this was updating, but we're not updating it this way. We are updating it a different way here. So we're running it into a pop filter job comp and then a pop div. Okay, good. So good. So now we have this, and it is fully functional. We have it chained. So the next video, I want to then take some data, and the first data that I want to take is just our base data with all jobs. So when we refresh, I want it to be able to populate all our data here, and then just like it's doing here, populate it here. And then when we select this and select that, and then we mash calculate, we then want this to change based on these values in here. And if we think about how we're going to do that, it's going to be a series of if statements. We can just write some logic here, and we're really only going to need one logic, two logic, and then if they're both full, if they're not full, so that's 4, and then also include if this equals all jobs or not. Because if it's all jobs, then it should just be everything. But then we'll have to grab that as well. Okay, so we'll work on the logic the next time. I'm going to end this video here, and if this video has been informative, please hit that subscribe button. Let us know to keep going on course with what we're doing here. And if you do have an idea on something you would like us to put together, or a question on something that we've already covered, please drop us an email inside our description box there. There's that email. And until next time, please take care.